Welcome to the February UN Info Session. My name is Amanda Lowery, and I am with the San Diego chapter of the United Nations Association. The San Diego chapter was established in 1946 and promotes engagement with the United Nations by translating global initiatives into a local context through education, advocacy, and other programs. You can learn more about these programs and what we do on our website, unasd.org, and where you can also view our previous UN Info sessions or watch them on our YouTube channel. So in this UN Info session, we honor the World Day of Social Justice by highlighting an impactful organization in San Diego that truly advocates for equal rights and equitable opportunities for all. I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Teresa Smith, who is the CEO of Dreams for Change, an organization that creates paths towards stable housing, financial education, and security, as well as provide supportive services for employment. So you can check out in the description for more information about their website and social media platforms, so that way you can follow their work and stay connected with Dreams for Change. So I would like to thank Teresa again for taking the time to chat with us today about her organization, its programs, and how Dreams for Change has supported our community members in need for over 10 years. So Teresa, if you would be so kind to introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about what inspired you to create Dreams for Change.
Not a problem. First off, thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of really talk about the work that we do here at Dreams for Change. As you mentioned, my name is Teresa Smith, and I am the CEO and founder of Dreams for Change. Started Dreams for Change, it's been 11 years now. Time's gone by real fast. But really with the goal, when we started looking at, the organization, it was at the time when the recession we were in the heart of the recession. And one of the things that, for me, I found very frustrating working in this nonprofit community was the lack of flexibility that they had to respond to emergent needs. They just, were not apt to quickly responding to what, the needs that were being presented at the time. And so, for me, that was a lot of frustration, and I wanted, in essence, do something different and start really taking a look at some of the issues that not only were emerging, but, some of the things that have been ongoing over a long time that haven't really been solved or resolved. And homelessness really rose to the top. At the recession, we just started seeing a new wave of individuals that were becoming homeless for the first time often, and just were kind of getting lost in the system. And it was very frustrating, I know, for them, and then also for, me as a service provider, that, that the systems weren't made at all for them. And so that from there, that's kind of where we started with the idea of Dreams for Change, of really kind of taking a look of how we can step outside of the box to start addressing some of these issues. And, and launched our first program, Safe Parking.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. And among many of those programs, which I'll ask you about safe parking in a moment here, but I'd love for you to talk about the Dreams Cuisine program, which actually provides affordable meals, but also develops social enterprising skills as a workforce training program, where individuals who participate actually learn business skills to help them gain stable housing and employment. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about how the Dreams Cuisine program has actually impacted individuals that are involved.
So yes, so as you mentioned, with the Dreams Cuisine program, it's a very comprehensive program that we're layering with the social enterprise. So providing an opportunity for what we call our trainees to get on the job paid experience while they develop the skills that lead to that kind of permanent unsupportive employment. And really with that program, what we're doing is we're working with people who have the highest barriers to employment. They typically have kind of 8 to 10 barriers. Oftentimes those lead barriers are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, justice involved, and just facing all those kind of things really that come with that, or, all the layers that come with that. And the goal is to, get them on that workforce path so they can start building those financial resources to hopefully eventually thrive. So it's a very transformative program because it's, like I said, it's a comprehensive program. So it's gaining those kind of soft skills to be successful in employment, while at the same time doing a lot of personal development, because we know that, the person and how they develop has a lot to do with the success that they have in an employment environment. So it's, it's taken someone, for instance, an individual that I ran into when I was dropping off actually paychecks. And this guy came out to me, he just recently came into the program, had been in the prison system for about 10 years prior to that, and was just amazed that someone was giving him the opportunity to actually work and earn money. And he's telling me, I never thought that this would happen. that I was going to be locked out because I have this record, and that kind of hope for that future. And that is it. People, what we find is that people want to work. We've, like I said, we've layered a lot and have done a lot of work especially this last year, with those who are experiencing homelessness, because we kept hearing from people that were on the street as when we come out with our social enterprise, which is a food truck. How do I get that job? How do I get to work? And so we really took a hard look at that. How can we work with individuals who are literally sleeping on the streets and start them down on that employment pathway? And so we do it. We layered in those supports and trying to, at the same time, stabilize that housing. We have another gal, Bobby, and she, once again, had a lot of addiction issues and hadn't been able to maintain a job for quite some time. She went through the program, did very well. Now she's working full time in retail, is saving up money to move from her sober living environment to her own apartment, and is really taking those next steps forward. And a lot of times, like I mentioned, it's just having that opportunity. And there we get the flash, the opportunity to really move those, help those individuals move forward and take those steps and build their confidence. While at the same time earning that wage, because we also know it's very important to put money in people's hands right away. Not only is that reinforcement for the work that they do, but that's part of their barriers, is that poverty issue, and start building those resources and so they can address those barriers.
Amazing. So with the Safe Parking Program, which for those watching is provides safe overnight parking space for individuals who are experiencing homelessness or have only their cars or vehicles to use. And then you also provide other supportive services through that program. So I was curious as to how maybe COVID-19, the pandemic, has impacted that program that you've seen this past year, as well as if you have any feedback or stories that you'd like to share about individuals who experience that program.
Yeah. So COVID, really impacted us up front when it first started. And it really did, as a program, it didn't have much impact. Naturally, cars provide barriers for social distancing. It's a program that's operated outside. So we've been actually very fortunate over the course of this time to not have any outbreaks on site, and been able to really keep everyone safe. But where we saw that impact was, immediately with our clients. The number one thing that they ran into was when COVID hit and everything started shutting down, and mostly the gyms, they lost their resource to showers. And all resources, we shut down the parks, the head showers, we shut down, any place where they had those access to showers. So we had to immediately respond. We actually built a shower at one of the sites so they can get the showers in and be cleaned, because a lot of our clients in that program are working. And that was, once again, kind of big barrier. I need to go to work, but I need to be clean. Right. And especially during COVID. So that was a great impact. Other things, it just came to shut down, is access to food became a little more difficult for them. And having, those resources to be able to access, the food distributions, that the need went up everywhere. So obviously the resources dwindled, the resources have to be spread out more. So those, I think, were our kind of our major impacts, is just those accessibility to resources that they may not have, they had before, that were cut because of COVID. Like I said, the program is ideal for this kind of situation because of the natural barriers it creates. So, as far as, the kind of that impact for our clients, it's, it's such a simple program. Literally a parking lot where people can just park safely and have access to services and simple things as bathrooms, and a little bit of electricity to charge electronics, to a whole host of things that we all need electricity for. And by doing that, though, what we've seen with that program is that it keeps people moving forward, versus being out on the streets, where they don't have those kind of accessibility type things. Then they start running into the cycle of getting harassed by police, getting tickets, the cost that's associated with all those kind of things. And it usually typically sends them down a spiral versus just moving forward. And so that's, I think it's very key for these types of programs that are these kind of catch people before it gets worse kind of thing. and just layer it with some simple things to really help them grab those resources. Because like I said, oftentimes people that are moving into their vehicle, it's their first time being homeless. And so they have little or no knowledge of what resources there are because, why would you if if you're not in that sphere? And so just being able to provide that connection to them because they think, just like we all do, homelessness. And our first thoughts go to the person that's sleeping on the street, in that tent or on that piece of cardboard. And, their thought is the same thing. And it's a disconnect. It's like, well, that's not me. I have my car, I'm still working part-time kind of thing. Where do I go? How do I do what, how do I survive? So just being able to be there and then moving forward and to help them get connected to those, simple things as some housing rental assistance for a few months. And, it's just a much cheaper way of doing business, I think, overall.
Yeah. Wow, very impactful. And I really resonated with when you shared the perspective change that, oh, I still have my car. I'm not that person, but then you essentially realize, oh, wait, maybe I do need extra assistance, and having just a safe parking lot that you can, there are other people are also going through the same boat that you can kind of connect with and help talk about those things. That's great.
That is definitely one of the things that we see with that program is the community that it creates amongst the group is probably more work or does more things for that group than we could ever do for them as social workers. Because of the mental health aspect of that connection, they're accessing the resources, so they're on the ground knowing exactly what's going on, and they share that across the group. The community factor is very, very important.
Great. And then I have a question that I think some of our members and viewers would like to know is that what do you see, regardless of COVID-19 and its impact, but what do you see as the most difficult barrier or hurdle that your organization faces when you are trying to do the work that you do?
So working in this sphere of homelessness, it's in general, it's very difficult. And there are a lot of hurdles. And where I see most of those hurdles come into play is the resources don't align with the need. So you'll have 10 people chasing after one resource. And, even, we have to struggle through that. Who gets what resource? Who do we refer, trying to determine who's going to be the most successful with that resource so it doesn't, in essence, get wasted in some ways. So in general, that's always a key. Even as an organization, we're always trying to struggle to grab the resources, to provide the services. But then also at the same time, I think some of the bigger picture, when you kind of take it to a macro level, where there's those barriers, reside within our policies, and how our local officials really enact policies. And it's a lot of times it's counterproductive to what we're trying to do. Be it the, like criminalization of homelessness. Here we're working with an individual trying to get them to work when next thing we know they're getting a ticket, another ticket, and we're watching their wages just go into these tickets. And so those types of policies definitely create a lot of hurdles when trying to move and help people who want the help move forward, where we can see hopefully some more change.
Yeah. And then I have a follow-up on that as well, where we'll get into what you hope to see. I'd love to ask you that at the end as a wrap-up. But what have you seen as a positive change or something that has, or an action that has taken place from the local government or even state government that has really helped you?
Local, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie, because I think we struggle locally, and I think we're gonna see some shifts coming up because of our county board of supervisors has changed quite a bit. We've had a lot of shifts this last year. So hopefully with those shifts, we'll see some of that change. But at the state level, I definitely see there has been a shift the last few years at the state level and how they address homeless and homeless type issues. And most recently, especially with COVID and the amount of federal dollars that have come to the state to help with the issue, is this very big push for quick housing. And so they've been putting out Project Home Key and a few other types of, dedicated funding streams, and it's happening across the state. And San Diego's been very fortunate to tap into these pools quite a bit, is to put a lot of housing online real fast by buying up old hotels and converting them into little studios, because that can be done pretty quickly. And or they can still move people in during the conversion and just kind of shuffle it so it's getting people off the street and then still converting. So I think that's something that has definitely been a very positive change, is that this dedication and commitment to do this, and even at the local level, because it does take the local, zoning and board approval to move on some of this, to kind of convert these kind of units into housing, and taking the stand to the not in my backyard kind of people, and just really saying, we need to do this, we need to put these housing online, and these are our opportunities. So that's, what I think has been one of the biggest positive changes that we've seen.
I definitely hope that continues in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah. And then, so the theme that the UN chose for World Day of Social Justice is actually a call for social justice in the digital economy, which focuses on the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic leading to remote work, impacting jobs and housing, and then ultimately this growth of this digital economy. And so I'm curious to know what additional struggles that this has created for you and your organization, or anything that you have seen as we have progressed throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, and for us, it's, as an organization, it's not really a struggle for us, but definitely for our clients. And it comes to, all these impacts of kind of like the remote work. Let's let our clients, they're frontline work, they're in our grocery stores, they're those frontline staff, and or they're in a situation where they can't work. So for instance, I had an individual reach out to me today, saying, I can't go back to work because I'm taking care of elderly parents in my household, and I can't risk the exposure until everyone's vaccinated. So I get it. So they're getting set behind in the financial game because of that near divide of having to care for others, or being in those vulnerable type situations. So yeah, definitely the jobs are getting impacted. That kind of remote work doesn't happen with our clients. They're just not fortunate enough to have those opportunities. They're either working or they're not. And then when we start, bringing it down to, as you talked about, the digital economy, well, we're dealing with, a community that is in a cash-based economy. And so as we move to this digital economy, yeah, you get everything home delivered. If you don't have access to those types of resources of credit, and, that digital kind of thing, once again, they're getting locked out and left behind. And it's just not catching up. Or as they try to get access, maybe through a prepaid credit card to participate, it's costing them a ton in fees, and money that they don't have. So I think, with some of these things of impacted of COVID that have been, some positives for some groups, but definitely very negative for other groups, because it just furthers that divide between those who have and who have not. And then, and you start looking at layering the systematic racism into the play, and who has those access and who doesn't. And so, it's, from that kind of perspective, looking forward, it'll be interesting to see kind of how this plays out, and as we come out of the recovery, and, and see kind of how that goes. But yeah, it definitely has impacted.
Yeah. And if individuals are already experiencing unstable housing, or they don't have access to housing, it's not like they have access to the internet. And so with places being shut down, businesses, you can't sit in a coffee shop or a Starbucks and use the internet for as long as you need if you're trying to operate a business, or anything else that's maybe data things online, or even the libraries. The libraries are still currently closed down. So that's.
It is. I mean, we have families that, families with children that are homeless, and they're homeschooling their kids in the car, parked as close as they can to the nearest free Wi-Fi spot because they don't have a library to go sit home to, or, a place to do that kind of work with. And so, yeah, it is very real. Our kids are getting, the same thing. Internet access is so key now that is often missing.
And so I would like to hear from you if you have any hope that you'd like to see in the future, or if you have a request even that you would like to throw out there for something to happen or change within the local government, or maybe even civil society can do to help support you in your work.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few things, as we look to the future, that, there's a few things that we've seen work, during this COVID time, the eviction moratorium has definitely done a lot of good for a lot of people to keep them housed. And I would love to see that converted to some type of long-term type of program. We've always known that evictions just wreak havoc on someone. Not only puts them out of homelessness, but it locks them out of the rental market for years to come, having that on the record. So I would love to see some type of carryover, maybe not necessarily a moratorium, but a way to help people work through that process so they don't receive that eviction a year down the road, 6 months down the road, 3 months, whenever the moratorium ends. Other things I think is going to be important is to continue to look at how a lot of the systematic racism has impacted our communities, and how COVID has layered that and compounded, I think, a lot of that issues. And and what does that mean, for our Black and Brown communities, and how we can empower them in many ways and really get them the right resources and tools to, stop this cycle of, the the criminalization of everything, and, everything that they go through, from the employment discriminations to there's so much, when it comes to that particular topic. But I definitely feel that it continues to needs to be a focus. And, and adding this health disparity that we're seeing right now. And more policies, and affordable housing goes along with that, because that's where we see a lot of the issues too. So that, as I mentioned earlier, stuff that the state's doing well, yes, we need to continue to bring housing online as quickly as possible. That's the only way we're going to get out of this issue around homelessness, is just to bring more housing online. And, as the resources come in to do that, I think they're all very doable things.
I was actually reading, I think it was an interview that you had done that I read or watched an interview, and you mentioned that the issue is, especially San Diego with homelessness, is that you have people who have grown up here, who have lived here their whole lives, and now that something has happened, or they just can't afford the rent any longer, and they're feeling forced to leave. And then that could be a factor into someone in a homeless situation. And I thought that was a great point to make, because I think, and I would love your feedback on this, but I think that some individuals say, well, if you can't afford it, then move. But it's not that simple. It really isn't. And, there could be other factors that are keeping them in San Diego.
No, and that's exactly it. There's a couple of misperceptions I think we have here in San Diego. One, our weather's so great, so everyone just comes here to be homeless, which is definitely a complete misperception. When they do surveys of the homeless, they just don't find that as to be true. Most people have been born and raised. And it goes back to that. This is their community. This is who they know. This is, their doctors are here, their resources, their families, their friends. And for someone to just uproot and to go to another place and lose that community and connection, as I mentioned, on the safe parking, how important that is. It's important if you're housed or unhoused. And it's just not as simple as just packing up and leaving to a different unaffordable place and starting over. It's just not. We need to take care of our community members. They have our history of our community. They have children in our community still, and those kind of things. And as we hear it, as we see, as our baby boomers and our elderly, we have a very much large growing senior population. And this goes back to things to keep on the horizon, is that they need the housing too. They need the affordable housing. It's important. It's just, if someone were to tell me that, well, you just need to leave, and I'd be, what do you mean I leave? This is my home. Where am I to go? Right. This is where I'm born, raised, what I know, kind of thing. So that would be absurd in many ways, at least for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, great. Thank you so much. Before I get into the presentation, is there anything else that you would like to share about you and Dreams for Change?
I think we did a good job covering most things. So.
All right, awesome. Great. I will pull that up here. Okay, so I want to thank again Dr. Teresa Smith for talking with me this afternoon about the great work that Dreams for Change does and what we hope to see in the future with improving the situation of homelessness in San Diego. So I prepared a brief presentation about the Sustainable Development Goals and how they connect to what Dreams for Change does, as well as how the Sustainable Development Goals can work on a local level so we can achieve it on to a global level. So on the screen here, you can see that there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which were created in 2015 and are supported by all UN member states in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. These are a global call to action and promote various initiatives such as gender equality, good health and well-being, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. So many of the Sustainable Development Goals connect to the mission of Dreams for Change, but I've chosen to highlight a few of the SDGs that really resonate with their mission and what they do. So, and I also will be sharing an actionable step, so that way those of you who are watching can do your part into reaching the sustainable goals on a local level. So first we have SDG 1, which is no poverty, and the goal is to end poverty in all of its forms everywhere. And one thing that you can do at home is to take the time to volunteer for any local nonprofit or community organization to help support what they do. And then we have quality education, SDG 4, which is to ensure an inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And things that you can do to support this goal is to donate books or other equipment or supplies that you have to either a school, library, or other organization that might be in need of those materials. And then we have SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth, which is the goal is to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, decent work for all. And one way to promote this goal is to ensure and advocate for a safe and inclusive environment at your workplace. And then we have SDG 10, which is reduce inequalities. So this is to reduce inequality within and among countries. And so what you can do on a local level to support this goal is to promote education among your family, loved ones, and friends about different cultures and different types of communities that are out there. And then we have SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities, which is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So one way to support this goal is to either use public transportation or maybe walk if it's available, or bike to destinations to help decrease your carbon footprint. And then the last one we have is SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, which is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And one way you can do this is to actually advocate for different organizations and movements, not only in person, but online. And one way you can do that is through the use of hashtags. Hashtags, especially on Twitter or on Instagram, really help connect what's something that's going on a local level to a global community and help support each other that way. And so with that, thank you again. And I hope you guys have a moment to check out the links in the description for the UNA Association in San Diego chapter for our website, and as well as information in all the social media platforms for Dreams for Change. So with that, thanks, Teresa. I really appreciate our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.